Well, someone in the comments yesterday was kind enough to direct my attention to a situation which occurred in Afghanistan yesterday, although I would have seen it anyway since it was at the top of the page on antiwar.com today. And the story, coming from Reuters, is that in Afghanistan, in Nangarhar province, I believe it was, there was a suspected, we still don't know all the details yet, but a suspected green-on-blue attack, which of course means that these are the U.S.'s Afghan allies, the guys that they've been trying to train to arm this new Afghan government that they installed after 2001, the one like almost 20 years ago that the U.S. has been supporting. Yeah, apparently some of those guys decided to kill a few U.S. soldiers. Now, the U.S. is not confirming that this was a green-on-blue attack. Frankly, I'm not exactly sure whether, because you can't trust whether or not, the U.S. is telling the truth, but it's just a matter of how they want to frame it. Do they want the public to think that this is a green-on-blue attack, or do they want to blame it on somebody else? Because they have a unique opportunity here, since this occurred not at a base, but rather out on some kind of patrol, from what I understand. And if that's the case, you can say, oh, well, some other group came in and attacked us. So you can basically blame it on whoever you want. All they would have to do is, claim that they have some kind of intelligence or whatever that's classified, and that would be good enough. The U.S. doesn't have to provide facts to the media in order for them to, report things as fact. The Pentagon simply, as far as the media is concerned, can speak truth into existence. And so why would the U.S. want to admit that this was a green-on-blue attack, an attack, on them by their allies, if they didn't have to? Because, every time this happens, the U.S. looks dumb. And what happens every time, there is a green-on-blue attack? People like me, and thankfully many more people, including people who, fought over there. Like, first person I saw reacting to this on Twitter was Kurt Schlichter, who simply replied to the story and said, "Out now." Meaning, the U.S. is accomplishing nothing by getting their guys killed over there by the very same people that, American soldiers are dying to protect. It really is absurd for the U.S. to continue to claim that, they're over there trying to protect and build up, this great ally of ours in Afghanistan, when you can't even get the very soldiers that you're training to be on your side. I mean, the situation in Afghanistan is, significantly worse than what you have in Iraq with the Iraqi army. I mean, I've talked, numerous times. I've beat it to death, the fact that the U.S. went into Iraq and installed Iran's best friends in the government. And that the Iraqi army is made up essentially of the Iraqi Shiite militias, which the U.S. now likes to call Iranian proxies. But even in Iraq, the guys who are wearing official Iraqi army uniforms don't go around committing mass casualty attacks against American soldiers. That just doesn't happen. An American soldier can walk around a base in Iraq and not worry that one of the guys wearing with an Iraqi flag on his sleeve is going to pull out his gun and start killing people. But in Afghanistan, they don't even have that much peace. In Afghanistan, anyone at any time could be an enemy of the United States because there's just that many people who don't like America in Afghanistan. There are people who rightfully, feel, hey, I've grown up my entire life with the U.S. In this country, and what have they done for us other than perpetuate more and more war? Think about it. This current generation, not only do they not remember Taliban rule, they don't remember the Afghan Civil War, they don't remember the Soviet Union. All they know are American bombs and American soldiers everywhere, and never have they known peace. And so these guys turn 18, and they're looking for a job, and so they join the Afghan Army. And if they don't immediately desert and go and sell their rifle to make some quick cash, and then never go back to the base, what might happen is these, fairly open-minded young people could be won over by some, seedy people that they meet who encourage them and say, hey, you're in a great position. You're on the inside now. You can do some real damage against the U.S., who has, perpetuated this war for so long. Don't you, hold them responsible? And they can, probably in many cases be convinced that, and not necessarily, I'm not saying that this is crazy or anything. I'm saying it's quite reasonable. And then once they're turned, once they see the U.S. as their enemy and they're on the inside, they realize that, they can make a difference, even if, it means at the end of their life, by taking down, a few Americans with them. Because, frankly, living in such a country, in such a state, there's really no hope. So what could be more hopeful to them than the absolution of martyrdom? And so, in short, the U.S. Wants to inflate the number of Afghan soldiers, because I believe in many cases they count guys who are simply not there. They count soldiers who do not exist as being a part of the Afghan army, and then they want to minimize these green on blue attacks so that it looks like that the guys that they're training are of a, at least somewhat of enough quality to where they don't want to turn around and kill them. And so in this case, I think it makes much more sense for the U.S. to try and blame some kind of outside group. You could say that they could blame it on the Taliban. There's been murmurs about that. Of course, if the Taliban did do this, I would expect them to, try and take some credit for it. And we haven't heard anything yet. But the other thing is something interesting that I think the folks over at Anti-War might be predicting is that the U.S. could blame this on Iran. Because, we know so little about this situation, the U.S. could just, make up something that's totally bogus. And the media certainly would lap it up because we've already got this narrative going of Iran bad. And so they could, blame this attack not on a green on blue incident, but rather, saying that this incident, which killed multiple Americans apparently, was the result of some act committed by a Shiite militia. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I thought those Shiite militias were over in Iraq. Well, yes, that's true. But there are, a small minority of Shia Muslims, apparently, in Afghanistan. And those folks are apparently not too well liked by just about anybody. So it would be pretty easy for the U.S. to blame this attack on the Hazaras. But frankly, even if that were true, does it make much of a difference? In the grand scheme of things, no. Does it, whether it's a green on blue attack or some other group that did it, these guys died because Trump didn't fulfill his promise. It's as simple as that. Every soldier that died after the day that Trump was inaugurated is, blood on his hands. Every soldier that died during the 8 years that Obama was president was blood on his hands. And, of course, George W. Bush started the whole thing. But Trump and, frankly, Obama, in less explicit terms perhaps, but still, both of them ran on getting out of these wars in the Middle East and ending the GWAT, the Global War on Terror. Trump explicitly said, hey, we're getting out of Afghanistan. It's a waste of time. People are dying for no reason. He said that, and then yet he's let these people continue to die for no reason ever since he's been elected because, he gets in there, and the man, he's not a man of very strong beliefs. He gets in there, and the generals sit him down and they say, here, Mr. President, this is the way things work. We make orders, and you take orders. Of course, that's not exactly how they worded it, but that was the effect. The effect was that they convinced Trump that, hey, you said all this nice stuff about getting out of wars, but that's not the way things work. We in America, we fight wars. We don't end wars. And if we quit now, well, we'd look dumb because we would have accomplished nothing. So because of that, that logic, because, the U.S. never wants to admit defeat, lest they look stupid, which, of course, in this case, the U.S. is very stupid. Well, then they just have to keep fighting forever. And so these young guys who are told by, frankly, you could say somewhat criminal recruiters that they're, going over there and doing something to, protect American freedoms or some nonsense like that. these 18 or 20-year-old kids go over, people younger than me, and get killed for no good reason. And they die, perhaps even without even realizing it. Happens in the blink of an eye. All of a sudden you hear some loud bangs, and then, you're dead. More American lives snuffed out for the sake of the Pentagon's dumb pride. So I'll leave you with the words of a Vietnam vet who I spoke to recently, and the sum of what he told me was basically, if you're thinking about joining the military at this point in time, don't. His son also fought in Iraq, and got messed up pretty good from what I understand, and that. After a while, people, they tend to smarten up to these things, that none of this really matters. And so, if that's the case, what's it all for? It's about money, it's about pride, it's about, frankly, bureaucratic inertia. I mean, the whole, war in Afghanistan really is just a big make-work project for the military. It gives these officers, an easy way to work up the chain and, continually be promoted. Because, of course, when it comes to working for the U.S. government, just because you fail at your job doesn't mean that you don't get a promotion. So if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.